You are listening to the 312 Squadron podcast. My name is Nick Sperry, and I am pleased to introduce Brian Gambrell, the architect behind the tournament organizing software. I'm going to re-say that line. The architect behind the tournament organizing software, Roll Better. He is a guest for us this episode. Brian, thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is the third installment of what we've been calling our interview series. I've kind of had an opportunity to pull some folks from different parts of the community and chat with them and ask them some questions. And in the XWA, chat, you had mentioned it'd be cool to be on a podcast and talk about Roll Better. I'm like, dude, I would love to do that. I mean, it didn't cross my mind only because there's a million things going on for both of us right now. And so I was like, let's do it. And we made it happen. And this recording is happening on a day that it shouldn't. I scheduled you for Thursday and I thought it was today on a Tuesday, and you were still willing to accommodate. So I do appreciate you getting permission to be able to hop on with me for this.
All good. You're not the first podcaster I've suggested doing an interview with. You're just the first one who's actually been brave enough to accept it. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, that kind of blows my mind, and we're going to prove everybody, wrong as to why, they should have done that sooner.
I shouldn't be the first. Hopefully not right.
Yeah, no, we're not going to prove them right. We're good. So there's a lot of. First of all, we haven't released a podcast episode in a few weeks, and a lot has happened in the world of X-Wing. Brian, I don't know exactly what capacity. What's happened? I don't know what capacity you play X-Wing yourself. I mean, being so involved with the back end for tournament organizing stuff, like for Roll Better, I think you would. But how much do you play?
And I wish I played. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old, so the play time is at an all-time low. Yeah, it's not happened as much as I'd like it to happen. I did teach a neighbor, and we moved to a new neighborhood in October, and I taught a neighbor how to play, and he left the first game we played. He said, "I'm addicted," and I was like,
"Oh, okay. That's what it'll do to you."
Yeah, and that was honestly the first game of X-Wing I've played, and oh man, maybe over a year. Honestly, it may have been a year and a half. That I just don't play X-Wing. It's just so hard in this stage of life with everything we got going on. I mean, I'm potty training a 2-year-old right now. So, it's not as much time as I'd love, but man, I still love the game. And getting to play with my neighbor a couple weeks ago was just like that reminder of how solid of a game that it is in whatever variant, you're playing.
Oh, I would think that you would have to love the game of X-Wing to do something like Roll Better. And we're going to dive into all of that and, kind of the coming of Roll Better and everything like that. But, obviously, we're in this period of limbo with X-Wing where there's a lot of exciting things that you and I are directly involved in with the X-Wing Alliance, but there's just also a lot of folks in their own respective communities that are just kind of deflated or confused and don't really know what's next because some folks just got into the game recently, right? And I don't even want to wrap my head around what it would feel like to be somebody in that position who just bought in and found out that their game's not being supported anymore by the people that sold it to them. What have you noticed from behaviors and attitudes online? Because I feel like recently a lot more people are kind of on edge about things. And, what have you noticed?
I've noticed the people who have been sort of, feel like they've, in hindsight, been shot calling something like this for a while, and the confirmation bias is making them go crazy. I don't think it was a hard thing to see, but there's a lot of people, I've been pleasantly surprised by how few people have been saying the game is dead. I think the opportunity that exists right now to turn X-Wing into the best miniatures community in the world, I think is laid before us. It's almost like the handcuffs have been taken off. And so I'm excited to see what becomes of it. There's good examples in the gaming community of successes with legacy groups. I think you have one of the most interesting IPs, one of the most interesting rules, the best dogfighting game I think that's ever been created for a tabletop. It has so much. It just the community, the X-Wing community is so passionate. That's honestly what got me into the game. I went down to Gigabytes Cafe in Marietta back in 2019, I think, or maybe it was 2020, wow, I don't remember. 2020, 2021, somewhere in there, man. When you
Yeah.
have children, you don't remember anything. Yeah, I met people like Andrew Lippens and Charles Holcomb. I don't know if you those names ring a bell,
Yeah,
but
Pim and Mr. Pink
yeah,
Panther, yeah.
Good old Pim Miniatures, and I mean those are the guys who taught me how to play X-wing, and so it was just so much fun to go and see them, and play. And once kids started coming along, it kind of tapered off. But uh, just great people, and then getting exposed to the wider X-wing community online, especially during the pandemic. Starting up Quad Print Yards, and just the amazing, passionate support that like players gave me. I had some customers on for Quad Print Yards that were just so encouraging, such big fans, and just I really do like it's really the community to me that gives me hope that X-wing has a really bright future. And so, no one's going to be able to convince me. I'm not shutting down Roll Better. I'm not hedging my bets. Like, you know,
Yeah, I hope
I
not.
think I think the future is bright. So
Yeah, I agree. And and before, you had mentioned co-op print yards, and my affiliation and being around X-Wing at GSP, I know that name very well, and I'm about to ask you about that. But just, to go into the XWA thing really quick, for those that don't know, Brian and I are both heavily involved in the X-Wing Alliance, and two very different kind of heavily, for me, you probably more so in a bit. We'll get there. For you, good for
yeah,
you right now. You're not as busy as I am, but you might be more busy later. That's not a threat, by the way. It might sound like it, but like, we both have roles in this project, and I think it's important. People haven't heard from us on our own podcast, 312, about like what the XWA is. So just going to give you guys a quick rundown on what I'm doing for it. The X-Wing Alliance is a community-led effort to continue the game of X-Wing moving forward from all sides of all aspects, from OP to points to design. Just the livelihood and sustainability of the game is in our best interest moving forward, and we are going to primarily focus on the biggest changes after Adepticon 2025, when OP support is officially ended for X-Wing. But there's a lot of work that we're doing in the meantime, and I'm doing a lot of PR and communication stuff because I'm quote unquote the PR communications person for XWA, and jumping on podcasts and just kind of making sure I represent our efforts and what we're all trying to do as a group in the best possible way, while also being open and transparent and answering questions. And it's been a lot of fun, but it's been a lot of work. And Brian, you're in the server as well with XWA, and I'd like to. I guess I'll just ask you that now because we're on the topic. Like, where do you see yourself kind of fitting into XWA in the next year and beyond?
yeah. I think I was the last person that sneaked into the Discord at the very end before they and that was because on my I actually I at everyone on my Discord for Roll Better and was like, if anyone's handing out invites, I'll take one. And so in my day job, I'm a lead software engineer at a company called Chick-fil-A. Don't know if you've heard of that
Oh
company.
yeah, they're never.
Yeah,
Well, you're not working on Sundays. That's all I know.
that's right. Well, maybe not on chicken, but on Roll Better. Every now and then maybe. Um, So, you know, something about Chick fil A is there's a really big emphasis on organizational leadership there. They're very good at leadership development. Um, I consider myself a pretty good product developer, not just like on the engineering side of like being able to execute and make it happen, but on the product side, like I don't mean design. I'm a terrible designer. That's why Roll Better is just a bootstrap website because I'm terrible at design. But from a product perspective of what features do I build, what is the path to a viable product? How do you get to something that's going to I don't want to say beat the competition, but how do you make something that users love? And there's a process there, and so I would love to quit my day job and do Roll Better full time, and I have a game plan on how to make that happen. We can talk about that later, but I just really enjoy it's something I learned when I was doing Quad Print Yards was I just love making products, and I love to see when someone is like really passionate and really loves when you meet someone's need with something you've made. And I'm sure, I mean, this is your product right here. I mean, this podcast is your product, and I'm sure you can understand kind of what I'm saying here is when you make something and you kind of put it out into the world, and someone that you don't know finds it, and then they enjoy it, and it pleases them, and then they tell you, it's like there's nothing really else quite like that as a
Yeah.
creator, and that is
You're famous a little bit then. There's a little bit of fame and aspect involved there.
maybe in the X-Wing community people know who I am, but yeah, I think so. So, anyways, having said that, product development, organizational leadership, and I'm not saying I'm great. I'm not saying I'm like the best person in the world at either of those, but I do feel like I have something to offer there. And so I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to step up and try to be like CEO or on a council, but I do think I can offer a good voice on the technology side of how can technology help the XWA achieve some of its goals. Um, how can how can the XWA lead a community in a way that is going to be effective? Something that for example, something that I've tried to do is I've noticed like there's a lot of hot topics in X-Wing as far as rules and road and um, points and things like that, right? And at the end of the day, all of those decisions, I view them really as tactical decisions. And what I mean by that is, when you're trying to lead something, you really and I try to lay this out in the Discord. You have vision. Vision is at the top, right? Vision, and then you have outcomes, and then you have strategy and tactics. And I stole that from a coworker of mine named Corrigan. He's wonderful, Corrigan Brown. He's a
Cheers,
great guy.
Corgan.
Yeah,
Cheers.
so I'm not going to steal that without giving credit, but
Yeah.
that's something that he came up with that I found very helpful for sort of thinking about how do you create alignment amongst a large group of people. And when you focus on should we be 20 points or 200 points, that's so down at the tactical level. If you and people get really heated in their disagreements about things like that. But when you go up to the vision level and you say what do we believe in? What future are we all trying to create together? We're trying to create a healthy, diverse, global community that's unified around the best dogfighting tabletop game ever created. Like that's what we're trying. Like, is there any X-wing player on the planet who disagrees with that vision? I'm not saying that's the XWA's vision, by the way. I'm not saying that is.
Well, no, I mean, I could say that that's the XWA's vision is to try to bring as many people together to keep playing X-Wing as possible and
Right.
to enjoy
Like,
playing X-Wing. So,
and so like
yeah.
that's the future we all believe in. So let's start there. Let's create alignment and unity around that, and let's talk about the outcomes. We want to see a massive tournament in 2026 and beyond. We want to see tournament attendance go up. We want to see a healthy meta. We want to see, maybe OP support and some sort of like HOTAC scenarios. Whatever, right? There's certain outcomes we can say these are the outcomes we think gets us to that healthy worldwide community around this game. And then you get into the strategies. Okay, well, how do we do that, right? And then at the very bottom, you have someone's gonna make a decision about points, and that's tactical, right? And so I hope that we can all unify around the things that really bring us together
Yeah.
about the game that we enjoy and the future we're trying to create for it. I hope we can unify around that and not get stuck down at these lower level discussions. They need to happen, and they'll happen, and they're important, and we'll figure it out. But like, let's not lose sight of we have so much more that we agree on and that we want for this community than we don't.
Yeah, absolutely. For those that are listening, he didn't read from a teleprompter there at all. It's literally all straight from the heart. So, that was good, Brian. I mean, I agree with a lot of that. I agree with all of it, really, essentially. And there is more opportunity than we've ever had. We're not beholden to, neglect or anything anymore. When you have somebody like AMG, which I'm not going to go into a deep dive and ranting about AMG, but when you just don't have a studio that pays attention to you and really shows a lot of effort or care for whatever reason, business reason aside, it stinks because you
Yeah,
feel hamstrung and that there's a lot of limitations, and now the limitations, a lot of them have been dropped, and um, it's in our best. And if no one's going to step up to keep the game going, it's not going to keep going. And it's
yeah,
really cool to see everybody kind of unify around that purpose. And we'll see what comes of it. There's a lot of question marks that people have, or just in general, and we'll answer as many of those as we can in next several months. And let's talk about roll better Kuat print yars. Let's dive in. Brian, you talked about what you do for work. You alluded to having two kids, one pretty newborn. 5 months is pretty young. Congratulations, and that's also, you must be tired.
I'm very tired.
I'll be thinking of you. But what's something that you feel is like, what's like those like really lame corporate intros? Like, give me an interesting fact about yourself that maybe people don't know about you, that besides your brains behind technology and Kuat print yards and all
I
that.
mean, um, I'm like I call myself a serial hobbyist. I have this thing where I'll find a hobby and I will dive as deep as possible in it in a very short amount of time and learn as much about it as possible. And I'll like basically like change my lifestyle to accommodate it. And then eventually it reaches a breaking point where I realize that it's taken over my life and I have to set some boundaries and I sort of move on. And then, something else catches my eye. And then I've done, day trading. I've raised ant colonies from queens. I taught myself how to play the violin. I'm just like all over the place. I did X-wing came along, then Quad Print Yards came along, and now Roll Better, and so like it's just like a never-ending stream of hobbies. So and I don't know if you want to know anything about ants, but I know way too much about
Oh,
ants.
that's amazing. That's no, that's great. I remember when I interviewed Will Schick with AMG, and he had mentioned that he had mentioned, well, and Michael Plummer, and sorry, his name escaped me for a second. And they were giving us fun facts, and it just blew me away. One was like in a rock band, the other one was like a professional juggler, like really good at juggling. And it's like, you would never guess these things. It's just super fun to talk about that stuff because I we get so locked into what we do with what people know that we do, that it's like you kind of almost forget that you're human. It's a weird thing to say. I feel that way sometimes. Where you're just kind of like, you're the roll better guy. You're like, people just message you and be like, there's a problem with this, and it's like the only thing they see you in is that tunnel. Hell, when I'm going through our DMs, I was messaging you about some bug or feature or
Yeah,
whatever, and
yeah, I
in the
saw that.
past, and yeah, right. And it's just kind of funny to think about, but it's important to kind of open that up, and a lot of people know the work that you have produced, but they don't know you. And so hopefully one of the goals of this conversation is for people to get to know kind of behind the curtains and behind the scenes as to like the who behind the what on Roll Better itself. Now, you are aware of Tabletop TO and the whole legacy of Tabletop TO, and
Yeah,
obviously which was an amazing resource we all used for X-wing years ago, and when we found out that that was being kind of hung up and walked away from, which I understand why, there was kind of a glaring need, and I feel like you did factor into that. So I just want to throw it to you and kind of walk me through how Roll Better kind of came to be.
so yeah, there was that announcement that the guy who made it he made, and I mean, honestly, as soon as I saw the announcement, the gear started turning. I'm a full stack web developer. I do Android, mobile stuff. I've done cloud architecture. Like I have a pretty wide ranging skill set on the software side, and I was like, man, I knew I could make this happen. I had heard about the negative experiences at the Atlanta System Open a long time ago, where like everything just stopped working. I've heard things about BCP. I'm not
Oh
bashing them.
gosh.
I've just heard stories in the community
Yeah.
over
I've
time of
experienced it firsthand.
yeah,
Yeah.
like we went to this tournament and nothing worked, and yeah. And I every time I would hear a story like that, I would think like, well, if I was making it, it wouldn't do that because I actually know how to do cloud architecture. But which yeah, anyway, well, I can talk about that later with Roll Better and how it's architected. I don't think anyone cares, but just know that it's pretty solid. So I was actually I made it to the Nova Open in 2022. That was honestly that was the largest X-wing tournament I had been to, and there were so many interesting nuances about that event. With like internet access was such an interesting part of that. I watching the judges and how they were administering the event, and watching how like just watching it all go down and just thinking, man, there's so many little problems here that you could solve that would make this event just run so much smoother. And not as a critique to tabletop.to, but at that Nova, like I knew, like it was shutting down in like October or November, I can't remember, right? So I talked to the tournament organizer for Nova, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about making a replacement for tabletop.to. Could you be one of the people who like alpha test it for me? Could you just like join this Discord and like help just give me some feedback? And he said yes, and had plenty of connections through Team Junkyard. Used to be called like Jawa Junkyard. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They ran a lot of online tournaments during COVID for X-Wing. I did a lot of prize support for them with Quad Print Yards. Really creative, amazing events. A bunch of really passionate guys. I loved working with them. So I just had access to a lot of people in the community that had something to say about tournament organization, and it just felt like, and Quad Print Yards at that time was sort of a victim of its own success. I was spending literally every moment of my free time 3D printing and packing and shipping orders. It was crazy, and there was also a little DMCA takedown order that I got from Disney. Let's not talk about that, but uh, yeah, I had to close up. I not had to, but I decided that it was time. It was time to close up shop. I knew long term a software product would be a lot more sustainable for my like daily life, and so yeah, the
Sure.
stars kind of aligned, and I took a shot at it. And there were some other platforms that sprung up at the same time from other communities like Legion and Armada, and some of the other ones that kind of got left behind in the tabletop.to in the dust there. They got, so there's just people kind of emerged from these communities to try to take a shot at making it, and I was one of them. And I'm glad I I'm glad that we've landed where we've landed, and I've seen the success I've seen. But yeah, that's kind of how it started, and
Sure.
started there. And now we're here, hosted
Yeah.
hosted
And
two X-wing Worlds and a lot of other major events, and still going strong.
it is amazing when you think about just how much the community has been relied on to keep the game of X-Wing going during the FFG and especially the AMG eras of X-Wing, where tournament organizing software, community driven with you and Roll Better, for example, and then squad builders for the longest time have
Yeah,
only ever really reliably been Yasby and Launch Bay are the two primary ones, with Andre
yeah,
Lind with Launch Bay and Stephen Kim with Rathos. And you put together Roll Better in my eyes and what felt very quickly. I know that there was a lot of planning and stuff that goes into getting it right. That something that was ready for the public very quickly. And Steven with Yasby, in terms of the stream overlay, which is also a tabletop TO. As a streamer, I use the overlay all the time, like religiously. It's like I know it so well, and that was gone. The stream overlay was sunset with tabletop TO as well, and Steven made that. And so, I think you guys are really our unsung heroes of being able to kind of not. We didn't have a really much of a beat skipped. Like we saw it happening, it happened. There was a few weeks where a little bit of limbo could have been way worse. It could have just been gone for good, or it could have been months. But you guys rose to the occasion, and we really do. I do personally myself and the whole community like really do appreciate that you were willing from the get go to take this on, and it's something that and that you're passionate about, which I think makes it easier, right, to be able to sustainably do. But like with Co-op Print Yards, you were partnering with GSP. You mentioned doing a lot of price support. I've interviewed Mark Ewell from Strata Strike and Andrew Knuckles from Curlpod Creatives, to name a few awesome Etsy shops that do gaming components. What drove you to do a Co-op Print Yards? Besides, I know you said you love the aspect of creating product for people and making them
yeah.
happy, but why?
I got into 3D printing in 2016, and so I'm I am a actually my degree is in mechanical engineering. So I'm actually a mechanical engineer.
Ah,
I'm also a
okay.
material scientist, and I'm a software engineer. So I can make pretty much anything, hardware or software. I can do like robotics and microcontrollers, and so yeah, it just uh, I just I feel like I have a rare skill set to basically make anything that I can imagine. And so when I started playing X-Wing, I know I'm not good at keeping track of things like little details, and so I would just miss triggers. I would lose components. It was bad. Like I would routinely assign a dial to the wrong ship and then fly it off the board.
Oh,
And it was just such a frustrating thing of like, this game is so fun and I'm just getting in my own way. How can I? And so okay, so it wasn't my idea. It was my wife's idea, that, to be honest. So I came home one night after playing X-Wing, and I was just complaining to her, like, well, I lost again because I flew off the board, and she just said, well, sweetheart, why don't you just design and 3D print something to color code your ships and your dials? And I was like, why don't I? You're a
yeah,
genius.
that's a great idea.
My wife is way smarter than I am. So I was like, okay. So I just threw together something, and I brought it to the game store, and everyone who saw it was like, that's pretty cool. could you make some for me? And I was like, okay, maybe I'm onto something. And then I just kept making stuff, and I mean, yeah, I just kept making stuff, and it took off. It sort of grew its own sort of thing and just took off, and started getting some really passionate people, spreading the word, and yeah, so that's kind of how Quat Print Yards happened.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. How long did you do Quad Print Yards for? You said 2016. It was so that would have been what,
Yeah,
five, six
gosh,
years, 5 years?
I shut it down. I shut it down basically September 2022 at Nova, and I started during the pandemic, or maybe right before. So it was probably early 2021. Yeah, maybe was it a year and a half? Yeah, maybe. I think it was less than 2 years. Honestly, kind of crazy. It felt like it
Yeah.
was so much longer than that. But
That does 2020, that 2021, 2022 pocket of time to feels like 7, 8 years ago.
yeah,
It's
right. Yeah,
almost like a different
It definitely
life.
aged me 8 years. So
Yeah, no kidding. You're not alone. That was the time for us all. It tested us all. So with Roll Better specifically, going back to Roll Better, we were talking about co-op print yards. Now back to Roll Better again, bouncing around. What are some gratifying, overall good aspects of managing the Roll Better software? What are some things that aren't so great, for lack of a
um,
better term?
the worst part is probably paying the server costs. I mean, honestly, that's probably it. I wish it was cheaper. It's not a crazy amount of money. It's really only about $200 a month that I'm paying, which I'm not saying that's not a lot to some people, but in my situation that I'm in, it's manageable, and there's not really a risk of it going up significantly. That's probably the worst part.
Did you have to expand that based on the demands of player size? Because like for example, tabletop DO would crash when there would be 200 people playing X-wing in one event. No,
Nope, that doesn't happen because of the way it's architected. So
nice.
matchmaking is calculated off server. So the server does not wait for a matchmaking result. So you could have a 300 player tournament and go kick off a matchmaking for a round, and the server just keeps chugging along because that calculation happens off server on a separate serverless implementation. That's one reason why. The other reason is because I've implemented caching. So it's not the most sophisticated caching implementation. If I had more money I wanted to throw at it per month, maybe like $50 to $100 more a month, I could probably get a better caching implementation. But the one I have, I think, is good enough. So those things combined really help it. Now, if someone does, I mean, it's not like you couldn't DDoS the thing, but it hasn't happened. The server has crashed during Worlds, but the server has an automatic restart that takes less than a minute. So if it does crash and you're like, I can't see anything, just wait like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and you'll be good. You'll be good. So I think at the last Worlds event, the server crashed twice, but it instantly recovered, and it wasn't. It according to people who were at the event and the TOs who were running it, there were no issues from their perspective. So that
Yeah,
was good.
no,
The
absolutely.
best,
I think
the
I th- I think I remember in the hate in the early days, like it was just like the being logged out randomly, sometimes after 5 minutes, sometimes after an hour, sometimes not at all, and that's
Yeah,
I can log into my account and still be logged in. I think
yeah.
that's probably an easier fix, but I just know that if those are the kinks that you're really ironing out, I think you're in a pretty good place overall, right? Like if that's like one of the major things, like who cares? I'll log in
There,
again. It's
you're
takes
right.
3 seconds.
There were some rough times in the early days. The logout issue was just my laziness and not implementing a proper refresh token. So basically, once your auth token expired, you just bye bye, log in, have fun logging in
Yeah,
again. It also didn't check for your auth token, so it kind of got in a weird state where it kind of thought you were logged in, but you weren't. So like it showed you a logged in UI, but you couldn't do anything. That was interesting. But yeah, I've there's an issue where like a list where there was the issue where I did a change and like a list all of a sudden became public for like Worlds. I think the first time around that was pretty bad. Definitely those like firefighter moments are probably the worst. But those don't really
yeah,
happen anymore. That's more of a product maturity thing than I'm a bad
sure.
engineer thing. It was like it was just trying to make an MVP, minimal viable product, and caching wasn't on the list, and a mature authorization process wasn't on the list. But eventually they came around and we got them. So, but the best thing,
Yeah,
the best thing about Roll Better is just when someone comes in the Discord and says, ran a tournament, had no issues, it was amazing, thank you so much. Like that's, is there anything better than that? I don't think so.
Yeah, no, it's like sometimes you're like, oh really, that's it? Like you know, it's not when somebody said like, oh like it, you know, this was like you know, a life-changing moment of my life. It's like, no, things are working properly. That's what makes me happy, because that's the goal, right? It's just like, I don't need, you'd rather just have 100 of those kind of very vanilla, just like things went well, no problems. But to the average person, it might seem vanilla. To you, it's like music to your ears, because you're like, great,
Yeah,
that's that's what I want to hear. That's what I'm trying to do here. Now, are you,
yeah.
were you on, would you be on call per se, you know, with like Chris Allen or, you know, anybody running these bigger events like in
Mhm.
Worlds, right? You're like, you're probably on standby if something happens, I would assume, right? Like
Yeah,
paint a
yeah.
picture of what that looks like.
Yeah, if you're running a major event and you need support, then you can let me know before the event. Um, yeah, I've definitely have worked with Chris Allen directly on Worlds both years. Watching Discord, you know, I mean, he calls me if there's a problem. Yeah, everything. So, yeah, I will say like it's not like, I would say if the player count, if you're either using a new feature or the player count exceeds 200, that's when I'm probably going to get involved. Like I would, if you're over 200, I'm going to take my own initiative to reach out to you and be like, hey, here's my number. If something goes wrong, just call me. Yeah. So in sort in a way, I'm always on call, right? Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
the number of times I've like run out of the bedroom and told my wife something's wrong with the website and like run out of the bedroom to go fix it real quick, and you know she's just like, okay, you know,
Okay.
she's kind of
Yeah.
doesn't happen so much now though. So
Yeah, no, that's, I would assume that it seemed like I think I remember seeing Chris like maybe make a couple calls, and I'm like, I'm wondering if he's calling, you know, Brian, or like he's, you know, it's a real better thing, which I'm not to suggest that there was, you know, any sort of catastrophic issue, but just like, just because again, technology, it happens when you have that many players, and just it,
yeah,
you know, being on call makes sense. And it's actually, I think, probably for some people really nice to hear um that you're taking it to that level of seriousness, right? Like you're not somebody who's just like, I'm in Malibu, like good luck. You know, like you're somebody who is reachable in instances where they should be, when there's large events that are important, like Worlds, right? That's
yeah,
cool. Not that I
definitely not
doubted
in
it.
Malibu, that's for sure. But
Yeah, I don't
we'll
know. It's
definitely we'll
I
also
feel like I cite that as like the vacation, stereotypical vacation spot. You know, you're probably not spending much time with the
yeah.
family in Malibu, but
Yeah, on one hand, it is a hobby, and I'm going to have boundaries in my personal life to make sure it stays that way. But on the other hand, you know, I do stand behind the products I make, and so
yeah,
I'm happy to support, you know, large events that where you just need that extra level of um, feeling safe that your event's going to be able to
security.
go off.
Yeah,
Yeah, that just that extra level of security to know that you can, you know, rely on it. Most of these platforms are community built, and so don't have elaborate support structures, but just knowing that, you know, just want people to know that like I do stand behind it, and it's, I think it's reliable, and they can depend on it.
yeah, no, absolutely. Now, is roll better strictly always just going to be for X-wing, or is there like, what is roll better for in terms of game support?
Yeah,
Is it? Are you planning on supporting other games?
man.
What's that look like?
That's a big question. So yeah, so okay, so I'll give you like the where I want it, what I want to do, and I'll tell you why I'm not doing it. Okay. So
Okay,
what I want to do is I want to open it up so you can add any game you want to the website. Right? I mean 40K, like literally like Catan, I don't care. I want to, I mean soccer, like I want to open it up so you can put anything you want on it. I want to keep it focused on tabletop miniatures. I don't really want to get into like I have my cornhole league and I want to use, you know, roll better. So I'm sure some people listening to your podcast don't know what cornhole is, but I live in the South, so I'll use that as
yeah,
an
yeah,
example.
right. I know what it is at least.
um, so that's what I want. The problem is the product at the cost I'm currently paying. You know, I can't afford to let anyone come in with any game. I just unless it's a real company that's actually generating revenue, I just can't do that. So that's part of why I can't do it. That's what kind of it's mostly a money thing is why I can't.
So
The
it
other
scales
reason,
per. Would you say if you added one more game? Sorry to interrupt. If you added one more game, it automatically like that adds cost. Like every game would add a little bit more, or how would
no,
that?
No, it's not about the number of games. It's about the number of events happening simultaneously.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
imagine at Adepticon there were 5 different game systems using Roll Better for major tournaments. So X-wing, let's say X-wing, let's say like optimistically, X-wing Armada Legion, 40K, and something else, right? They're all using Roll Better for all their major tournaments at Adepticon. Uh, I could handle it, but I would have to put some extra servers in play. I would have to scale my compute in the back end to handle that. The front end would be fine, but the back end would need some help, right? So um, that the cost of that would probably of an event like I could just sort of know Adepticon's coming and only scale it for that time period, and it might cost me $50 to $100 just to do that. But I don't even want to do that because then I have to be aware of all the major events that are happening for all the different game systems, and it's not feasible.
Yeah, I
But
got you.
that's where
It's
I want to
yeah,
go. I want to go to a place where anyone can add a game, and there's certain that means a lot. That there's actually a lot of implications with that statement of I want anyone to be able to add any game. You would be able to add any game. You'd be able to define metadata for the game. You'd be able to define rule sets for the game and version those rule sets and own them and make them public and share them. And yeah, like it's a lot, right? Like imagine you wanted to have a list validator for some custom X-wing tournament that was going to be, a 25-point tournament instead of 20, and you were going to allow multi-faction, and like there's specific list building rules, right? If you could have a way of telling Roll Better what those rules were, and you had access to an entire set of up-to-date X-wing data about the ships and the cards and everything, then you could just make your own rule set, and then rather than you having to manually check to make sure everyone's list is legal, it's just all automatically done for you. That's what
that's
I think.
cool. Yeah,
That's what I think Roll Better has to
dream
become.
big. Yeah, and it sounds. It's. I mean, knowing based on this conversation, it sounds possible but unlikely for very practical and logistical reasons, right? Like it's not like you'd be like I couldn't figure that out. It's really just because it's I get it.
Yeah,
There are things there are some very real barriers and in terms of being able to get that done. I think it's
yeah.
important to give context to that.
Technical complexity of building out a version control system for basically anything is a big feat for sure.
Yeah.
But I also want to do I want to provide I want it to be about communities. Like the vision for Roll Better. I talked about vision, outcomes, strategies, whatever. My vision is healthy gaming communities through competitive play. That's the vision. And so the tournament administration part is just one part of having a healthy competitive scene. I think there's a lot of other things that go along with that, like influencers, like yourself, and streamers like Gold Squadron, right? So I have a bunch of things rolling around in my head that would be tools for influencers to connect their content with Roll Better. I have a lot of ideas there. I built a little bit of it out, but I haven't quite decided what I want to do with it. So, my brother, he has an MBA, and he thinks a lot about companies and how to run them and stuff like that. And so, some advice he gave me was don't build something and give it to your users if you plan on heavily monetizing it in the future. And so the influencer aspect of it would be a lot of effort, and I would probably plan on having influencers do some sort of like annual subscription model for it, right? And so it would feel bad to give that tool to users and then later on say you can't have that anymore unless you want to pay me X dollars a year. Like it just doesn't feel, even if right, it doesn't feel good. The perception is like, ow, like I don't want people to have that negative association with the product. And maybe letting the cat out of the bag on this podcast is making people feel bad already. You can tell me as an influencer, but it's things like I have that's an idea, but like there's way more ideas I have for things that I think I could do, but a lot of them are sort of down the monetization lane, and that gets complicated
Sure. Yeah.
with money. As soon as you introduce money, it all gets very very complicated, you know. So
Yeah, and it hurts accessibility, right? Because factually, the access to the platform will be greatly diminished by users who can use it, depending on what the paywall might be for
Right.
certain features, right? And we can definitely talk more about the money aspect because I, with Patreon and the logistics of printing cards and paying for cards to be designed by artists, and which I believe in paying for artists to design cards. It's the least I can do, and we don't even get to pay that much, but it's important. Stuff like that. Money also is a really important aspect of 312 as well, and trying to balance incentivizing people like, hey, if you want a little bit more, you can give a little bit and you get this in return, while also making it accessible, and the core structure of who we are, and our Discord and all that remains open to anybody. There's a balance to walk there for sure. And
Yeah.
I know people get annoyed when I stream on Twitch and they're not subscribed and they're like, I just had to watch 2 minutes of ads while you were talking about this thing. And it's like, I feel bad because I don't want to just be like, well, just, subscribe, because I get like $2 out of it. It's really kind of a menial amount of money. But you're kind of burdened by the platform. And so I try to upload everything to YouTube, a free platform with minimal ads, interrupting games as quickly as much as possible to try to offset those things. But it's difficult because you do need to be able to make some money to spend money and improve the
Yeah.
craft. And that's a
Yeah.
goal of yours, and it really should be a goal of yours. I understand, people should understand that for sure.
Yeah, and I don't want to scare anyone talking about money. Like the core product will always be free. Like you will always be able to run a tournament for free on Roll Better. The only time that money gets involved is there a feature set for maybe an influencer or someone um, that would be willing to do a subscription, or the main
Sure.
monetization path I have right now is scraping a little fee off of a ticketing feature where you could include your ticketing and check-in process for your event. You just
Okay.
do it through Roll Better. And so like I've seen a lot of game stores use like Cvent and other websites that are just eventing websites, and those sites are just scraping fees off the top of ticket prices. That's essentially what I'd be doing as my first like monetization strategy. But if you wanted to do your payment and everything outside of Roll Better, like it's free. So I don't want to scare anybody with monetization, at
Sure.
all.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, and I don't think you would like when I was going back to access, that going full greed and putting it behind a paywall would just make Roll Better just not a usable site
yeah,
anymore. That's
yeah.
obviously not what we're trying to go
and
for.
and there's no ads on Roll Better because I hate ads, and I have no plans on ever implementing ads.
Yeah. Ugh, good. Bravo. Little golf clap on that one. It's nice to hear. Competition wise, Longshanks comes to mind as like top in terms of when I think of my X-wing brain. It's like Longshanks. People use
Yeah,
Longshanks sometimes. I've tried to use it. I I couldn't. I couldn't stand it for a few reasons. Um, I don't want this to be a barrage against Longshanks specifically, but let's talk about the competition that you see and that you deal
sure.
with, and
Yeah,
the things that kind of keep you concerned or on edge, or just aware of your surroundings.
yeah. I think Longshanks. I mean, you're not going to hear me really bash Longshanks. The guy who works on that or the team, like they're
From
providing.
Chicago.
Oh yeah, you know him?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
No. It's just when I
Okay.
paid for the little subscription fee, it said like Windy City. I can't remember exactly the name, but it's like Windy City Labs. I think it's like, I think I still
Yeah,
pay
yeah.
for Longshanks. I
Oh, okay.
think I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have anything. I mean, I think the UI could be better, but like I'm have you seen Roll Better? It's not like the homepage is terrible. I mean, the homepage for Roll Better keeps me up at night sometimes. It's so bad. But I don't really have much. I don't have much room to talk about good or bad design. I know people have struggled with using Longshanks UI. I don't know if that's technical debt or intentional or what. But no, like Longshanks is a critical tool for so many games, and they're providing that free. And so anyone who's doing that for a gaming community is a pretty awesome person in my mind. And so I'm
Yeah, I
grateful.
think I
I'm
had to pay
grateful.
for run my event, but it was like $5. It was really, I was like,
Okay.
I'll happily donate or pay for
Yeah,
that. It's
maybe
fine.
maybe I'm not aware of the monetization over at Longshanks. I honestly don't pay much attention to what
Sure.
competitor. I think in the world of product design, it's very easy for people to get distracted by their competitors, and I don't. I basically spend very little time looking at competitors. I know who they are, and I keep up to date with some of the news and stuff, but like you're not going to find me like stalking their discords or anything. Um, Yeah, I I I'm there are a lot of things that Longshanks does that I can't do. Right, team tournaments, for example. I have it on my to do list. I did a spike, which in software terms is like I did a little like exploratory coding to figure out what that would look like for Roll Better. It is possible. I have a lot of good ideas, I think, for it. It'll come. It'll come eventually. It's on the list. But Longshanks has team tournaments, right? And so I think that's great. Like there are things that Longshanks does that Roll Better doesn't do, and I think that's an important competitor to have. I think the best products come from a free market. That's what I think. And so if someone comes along one day and they build a better product than me, and no one uses Roll Better anymore, then I will applaud them and I will throw in the towel and say congratulations, you did it. Because at the end of the day, the X-Wing community has a better tool, and that's what every gaming community deserves. So that's kind of my position on competition. Um, what I think was interesting was the competition that sprung up after the shutdown of TTO. TTTO? Tabletop T 3 T's? Yeah,
Yeah, I think it
tabletop.to.
was TT. Yeah, I think I just tabletop TO. I think I used to just call TTO. I think is what
Or
the short form was, even though technically I think it's supposed to be three, but it was always two TTO.
yeah, so there was a group from I think the group from Legion created Game Uplink. Don't know if you're familiar with Game Uplink, but that was a tool created by I think the Fifth Trooper over. They do like a podcast and some stuff, and I don't know what the affiliation is. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I know they created something for Legion. That product has been discontinued, and they've moved all of their stuff to Longshanks. That happened recently, and I I'm in a Discord channel with a bunch of Legion TOs on a popular Legion Discord, and the Longshanks guy is in there, and I think some of the Game Uplink people are in there as well. And so it's been really interesting following the conversations there. They're constantly asking the Longshanks guy, like, "Can you add this to Longshanks? Can you add this? Can you add this?" And he's always like responding, like, "Yeah, I can do that." And I mean, the support that the support Longshanks gives and the responsiveness is phenomenal. I've witnessed it firsthand. On the Armada side, there was a website that sprung up called T4.tools. T4 meaning like we're basically the successor to tabletop.to. Uh, what to say about T4? It was interesting watching that product get built. I will say the Armada community is a interesting bunch of folks, because I went to tell them about Roll Better because I was like, "Hey, I support Armada," and and they were like, "Go away, we have T4.tools." I mean, there were some pretty mean responses to
Hmm.
me talking about Roll Better, and I went and did a little. I did a comparison, and it came out that like basically Roll Better was better than T4.tools in many many ways. And I would say I don't have very sophisticated list support for Armada, but I am working on that. Oh, by the way, just in case anyone plays Legion, I just released a new icon set for Legion on Roll Better. And even if you're not going to use it, you should definitely go check it out. I worked with a professional designer to come up with the icons and everything. So like please go check it out. But Armada, yeah, T4.
So just to interject right now, just because I asked you the question about what games are supported, so it's X-wing, Legion, Armada are the three that are you can do on Roll Better.
Basically all Star Wars tabletop miniature games I will support. And
Okay.
then if
Oh,
there are
cool.
special requests from the community, like Nickel City X-Wing, Greg asked me to support Aerodome. Is that what it's called? Aerodome? Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
Aerodome. Yeah.
yeah, Epherian Games or something like that. Yeah, so like I added that, right? And so he had some requests for that, and so I'll gladly support. My main issue is when I add a game is my thinking is how much support is this game going to take? That's the thinking. Not really. I don't think tournament count's going to get out of hand anytime soon, but just how much support do I need to provide? And so if it's like a really complicated game, like I'm not going to add Warhammer. Okay, it's not happening. But a little game like Aerodome, I'm not throwing shade at Aerodome, calling it a little game. Maybe it's a big game. I don't know. But gladly support a simple game that's sort of adjacent to the Star Wars tabletop community. But yeah, back to the T4.tools thing. I I was in their Discord and I saw a lot of people complaining about a lot of things. And every time I saw a complaint, I was like, well, Roll Better does that already. Like, why not? And so I poked around. I poked around maybe too much and asked some people, hey, want to use this? And basically, they told me was, we just don't know you. You're not from the Armada community, so we don't trust you, and we're not going to use your product. And I was like, okay, okay. I mean, if you want to be loyal to your people, if
Yeah, I
that's fine
guess.
with me. That's fine with me. I get
My
it. Like,
getting to know you, it's like you can get to know somebody and decide. It's like a very very black and white way to look at that for sure.
yeah, I think like one of the things that Roll Better does very well is matchmaking. So the matchmaking code is like 4,000 lines of code, and it is very sophisticated. Um, it it will give you, okay, and I have no problem saying this. It will give you perfect matchmaking. Like, it will give you the minimal amount of rematches possible. Like, I had someone come in and say, "Hey, your matchmaker gave me the wrong pairings. They gave me a rematch," and I actually drew out on a graph like, here's your players. Here's how many Swiss rounds you've done. It's too many for the number of players you have. It is mathematically impossible to pair these players without a rematch. And I explained, I like showed him the graph, and he was like, "Oh, you're right." And it was just like, when he initially told me, I was like, "Oh no, how, like, I worked so hard on it. I thought of all the edge cases, how, what could be going wrong." And I did a deep dive onto what he was saying, and I was like, "Oh no, the algorithm actually is correct." So like, if you want, I don't know what matchmaking looks on other platforms at this point, but if you want perfect, I mean perfect matchmaking, Roll Better has perfect Swiss matchmaking. So, and it has perfect round robin matchmaking too. Like, if you come in and add people like later on in the round robin, like, it will continue to like avoid rematches and pair as best as possible.
That's
So
cool. That's
yeah,
really neat. 4,000 lines of code. My gosh.
I didn't write all of them. It's a very sophisticated graph traversal algorithm, and
Okay.
I saw how other people had implemented their Swiss matchmaking and so many complaints about rematches, things like that, and I was like, what if I could solve this problem? So I mean, it is essentially a PhD level computer science problem. I don't think people realize that. It is like graduate level computer science, like graph theory is the actual solution to Swiss matchmaking, and Roll Better has it implemented perfectly. So there you go.
Yeah, that's I don't even think about the when it generate, create next round and the matches are set up about any of that. I just am like, yep, tech doing its thing. I'm not the most techie guy, more on the video side in terms of tech at best, really. But it's really fascinating to learn about how dense and how sophisticated it needs to be for there to be an actually adequate um, system of pairings and matchmaking, because it's so crucial. Like, I mean, X-Wing is a game, X-Wing specifically in this example is a game of so many variables that determine if you are more likely to win, or at least have a little bit um, more of odds in your favor, right? And pairings dictate that in a lot of will dictate that, who you play, and it's important to get that right for sure. Now it sounds like this is, at times it can be a lot of work. So it segue into my next question for you, Brian, is why are you doing this all on your own? Is it an ego thing? Is it this is my thing? Is it, reasonably so? I'd only want to pay somebody and I can't afford to pay somebody kind of thing. Like, what would it be?
Yeah, I will say thank you to all the people who reached out and have offered to help, because when I originally started, I had people offering to help. And from the beginning, my vision for Roll Better was that I wanted to turn it into a company. And someone gave me some advice. If you're going to start a company, don't choose a co-founder who has the same skill set as you. And that's one of the reasons I don't have a co-founder. I guess I'd be open to one who'd be willing, especially if they'd be willing to finance it, so I could quit my job and do it full time. But yeah, I'm building it alone because I think that there's the ownership aspect. There's the product direction and like the vision and the strategy part of it that I do. So I don't feel like there's a gap in my skills. The only gap in my skill set right now that I think Roll Better would tremendously benefit from is a designer. But at this stage, that's really something I'm going to contract out and like pay someone to do if I desperately need it. It's not something that I'm going to like take on like a co-founder, like have invite someone in to do that. full time. If when if it becomes a company on its own one day, then I'll definitely have someone come in and kind of lead design, because I think design is very important, and I'm not
Yeah.
very good at it.
Can I ask you a dumb question I should have asked you like forever ago? Why did you
Yeah.
call it roll better? But is it
Ha.
just because of the meme? Like, hey, you just roll better. Like, I mean, it's kind of a meme. Like,
Yeah.
the name is great. I just like, why did I
Yeah.
not ask that earlier? I don't know what's wrong with me. But
So I came up with a bunch of names, and it came down to domain availability, because you got to pay. There were some names that I came up with, and the domains were like $10,000, and I was like, not naming it that. I was thinking of some like tongue in cheek things to give you an idea how bad of an X-wing player is. Sorry, how bad of an X-wing player I am. After every match I play on Tabletop Simulator, I always check my dice score. Okay, so that's how bad of an X-wing player I am. And so, like, I always tell myself, like, if I had just rolled better, I would have beat that guy, which is probably never true, right? But I came up with a list, and I threw it out there on the Discord and said, "What do you guys think?" And there was a lot of positive responses to roll better, just for like how cheeky it was. And
yeah,
so yeah, I checked the GG domain, and it was available for $10 or something like that, and I snagged it.
nice,
And there we go.
good deal.
Some of the other names were Tabletop Stadium was in the running. I thought Tabletop Stadium was a decent one.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
stadium, nice.
yeah, there were a couple other ones that were dice related. I I intentionally didn't make it X-wing specific, um, or like T4 tools. I was definitely not trying to claim to be a successor to TTTO, whatever it's called.
Yeah,
But yeah, the name. I love the name. I love the logo, the simplicity of the 8-sided die logo. I think it rolls off the tongue. I think it's like an inside joke for the tabletop gaming community. I think it's an inside joke, and I think that aspect of it, that playfulness, is something that it sort of encapsulates as a brand. I think it has a potential to have a pretty strong and memorable brand. So
yeah, and
yeah,
you have a little hello there at the bottom with a smiley face, just to kind of
yeah,
a little wink
yeah.
to the
Oh gosh,
funness
my
of.
my footer sucks too. There are so many problems. There's so many things I look at the
Oh, I
website.
wasn't trying to call you out, but if you
Yeah, I
consider
know.
yourself called out,
When
I guess.
when you
Yeah,
make something, you only see the flaws. You know what I mean? And so I just can't help but see the flaws everywhere.
yeah. One of my questions that I had added was is it remind me, are you considering roll better to be in an alpha stage, or because it's been in a specific stage, alpha or beta, you correct me because they're very different. I know the
Yeah.
meanings of both of those. When will it kind of evolve into not being that at all? And
Yeah,
why has it been
development
that way?
development stages are made up, and the names don't matter. I'll just put it that way. I call it open alpha. It's probably more of a closed beta based on my definition of closed. So it's not closed to users; it's closed to more game systems, right? So it's probably in a closed beta right now. Is probably the more appropriate term. But I'm going by the roadmap I've set out and the features I want to have. I will consider it out of beta when there's a stable monetization system in place, right? So when I have event ticketing will be the first step there. When event ticketing exists, I will consider, and it's stable, I will consider it to be out of beta, and hopefully at that point
Okay.
the homepage won't look atrocious at that point. So
You're doing a good job of segueing to these topics, man. This is really impressive. So
I'm not even
bravo,
trying.
because the
Not
next
even
the
trying.
quick question, right? Yeah, well, flex. Just gonna flex it in a minute. Not even trying. Money is a factor, and I think most people in the community and other gaming communities are well aware of that. You have been offered donations, or people have asked how they can financially support your efforts. My understanding is you don't accept donations, and I'm going to ask you why. And then, in terms of, you had mentioned event ticketing and stuff, are there other paths to monetization that you have explored in the future?
Yeah, I don't accept donations because I don't need them, which is a great place to be in. The other reason is just because I don't want people to give me money for what I'm doing when my long term plan is to profit from it. It just doesn't feel right to me. I don't think it's unethical. It just doesn't feel right. If I planned on this being a community tool that was going to be free forever and I had no plans on monetizing it, I would be accepting donations. But because I have that long, to me, this is, I just treat it like a startup. No one asks for a donation when they have a startup company, right? They ask you to use the product. And so that, to me, the best thing you can do for Roll Better to support the product is to just use it. And then one day when a monetization path comes out, if you find it valuable and useful, then use it, right? To me, the use of the product is the best way to communicate to me that it's valuable to you. And if that means giving me money one day for the product, then give me money one day for the product. But I don't feel comfortable asking for or taking
Sure.
donations.
Now, this might be an unfair question. Like, if you weren't in the fortunate position to just not have to worry about money, like, let's just say you're, average when it comes to just like expenses and stuff for like the average person, would that change the way you think about being able to accept donations, considering your track might still be to monetize, or or is that just a part of the puzzle?
I haven't really even thought about that, to be honest. I'm fortunate enough to be in a career that pays very well, and I'm very grateful for that. I don't take it for granted. My company also has a policy that they'll never lay anybody off ever. So my job is not, I'm not at risk of losing my job. If I,
That's good.
even if there's a bad recession and the economy tanks, like they'll never fire me or lay me off. And so that stability also sort of guarantees Roll Better's financial stability. And so I don't even really think about it.
Sure. Yeah. It's probably kind of a question that I didn't even need to ask, but I just do think about that because if I was better off, I definitely would look at things differently and how I try to incentivize people to join Patreon or subscribe to Twitch or whatever. I probably just wouldn't care as much. It's not that I care deeply about it now because it is what it is. It's not that important. This isn't a job for
But
me. It's just I enjoy
I
this,
mean,
but it's a
like
factor.
I can entertain the question. I think I probably just wouldn't make it if I couldn't afford it. I used to be very poor. I used to have like no money. I used to like, yeah. I there was one point in my life where I had $200 in my bank account and a car, and that was it. Like, so I know what it's like to not have means. I don't want to sound like insensitive or like boisterous when I say I have a stable career and am able to afford it, but yeah, I think
But
if
that's
I
also
wasn't,
can be true. I mean, yeah, no, for sure. I respect that.
yeah, if I didn't have the means to support it, I don't think I would accept donations. I probably just
Yeah, and I guess it's
wouldn't
less
be
about
building
the
it.
means as much as like, or like, not saying you couldn't afford it, but it was just more of a factor. Like, oh, like these server costs, or like, oh, like I just can't go. Most people would just worry about it a little bit more if it actually if it moved the needle more, I guess. But not really important thing to dive into. I just was curious. It's just I think it's more of just like a kind of a lifestyle question, right?
Yeah,
And I think it's great that you are in that position. You've worked hard and you have a family and you need to support. And you don't need to give me you don't need me to give you a pat on the back for living a life with a stable job. But it's good. It's important, and I think that's actually a great aspect of Roll Better for people is that it's secure because you're secure. Those things matter to people. They don't think about it, but it matters.
there's
Yeah.
actually one way to support me financially. I uploaded, so the Kuat print yards thing shut down, and I immediately got asked by a bunch of people, how can I get access to the model so I can print them myself? And so I'm actually releasing more. I'm on printables.com. I have a store there, and I'm going to be releasing more 3D models. I released the first one, which was my dial covers I was really well known for. The fancy ones that like had the target locks that slid in and out of the dial cover.
Mm.
Uh, so I don't even know if you know what I'm talking about, but I uploaded 3D models there. I posted about it on Reddit. I needed 5 people to buy that before the website would let me upload more models to sell. And so I've hit 5, and so I'm going to upload more 3D models from Quad Print Yards, and those will be for sale. And so if you want to support me
Yeah, we'll link that in
financially,
our description.
you can buy from my printable store. Now you're only buying the 3D model. You're not buying the actual printed stuff. So if you have a 3D printer and you want to print it yourself, it's going to be
Yeah,
there. Stuff's going
keep
to be
that in mind,
available
folks.
there.
It's just the model, 3D model, not a physical model. Yeah, a lot of 3D printers would love to do that, to hear that. I'll definitely link that in our description so people can check that out. I think that's really cool that you're doing that.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, of course. Well, the last question I have for the conversation, and I think this has been a really cool, interesting, fascinating conversation, even if you thought maybe it might not be as so, it has been, Brian. So It's been great. What is something that you wish people knew about what you do, whether it be with Roll Better now or co-op print yards or even beyond that?
There are some hidden features in Roll Better that are extremely sophisticated, and really helpful. And I don't think most people. I can see who uses what features in the product. I don't think most people know about them, like the Discord integration. So you can have Discord messages sent to a Discord channel via a webhook through Rollbetter, like in Rollbetter, every time someone submits results, registers for your event, you can choose to have like a channel that's specific for like your judges and your admins, and only they can see certain events that happen. You can have another one that's player facing, and it sends like formatted Discord messages, like pretty formatted Discord messages with like links and stuff. It like there's a little bit of setup in the Discord tab, but like that's one feature I think is really awesome. I think is underutilized. The other one is the table feature. So if you go to the oh gosh, what's it called? I don't even know what it's called anymore. It's like the last tab. Movement. I think is what it's called in the admin panel. If you're a TO, you can actually control how players are moved around at tables during your event. So you can declare which table numbers are for players that can't move around a lot, whether that's because they have some physical impairment, because it's a kid and they need to have their parent keep an eye on them, or for whatever reason, right? You can assign a table to be for players who can't move around a lot. And the algorithm, when it assigns table numbers, will take that into account and place those players only at those tables, so they don't have to move around as much. Um, the that's so what's really cool from a technical standpoint is the algorithm, the very sophisticated Swiss matchmaking algorithm that solves that problem for Swiss matchmaking, is the exact same algorithm that solves the table assignment problem. Amazing enough, when I found that out was really cool. But the movement thing doesn't just minimize movement for players who require assistance. It also can help you avoid people playing at the same table multiple times. So if you're playing Legion and the terrain on the table is not going to move and matters, and you don't want to give someone an advantage by having them stay there, you can have them avoid playing at the same table twice for the whole event. And those like there's a few. I'm not going to go super deep. There's a few more other options there about how you can control player movement
That's
at
cool.
tables. But
I love that.
like again, it's like a graduate level computer science problem to solve that, and
Hmm.
it's so sophisticated. And I don't think many people know it even exists. But it's just stuff like that. Like I've put a lot of not just like a lot of passion and like and heart and stuff into the product, but like it's those little things that like you don't even realize how technically complex it is to make something like that, but the problems that it solves are, I think pretty useful. But yeah, when I think about the things that people don't know about Roll Better that I wish they did, it's things like the matchmaking is perfect. It's like the best you can get. The UI might be ugly, but man, like there is some serious technical sophistication behind the scenes going on. So
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have a more simplistic UI that really excels at the things it needs to excel at personally. So, I don't think that's something that I know that we're all aware. Like, you look at Roll Better and it's like, oh, this isn't the Sistine Chapel, but it doesn't need to be. And I
yeah.
think it would be cool. How crazy would it be if you got to that point? And then you mentioned working with a graphic designer potentially in the future, and so, but you gotta make sure that the core features work at the strongest possible level, and you've done a great job with that. So,
Yeah,
I'm
go
gonna
check
cut
out
you
those
a
Legion
lot of
icons.
slack with the
Go check
UI.
out those Legion icons. They're
Yes.
really cool. And if anyone's here Legion, if anyone listening who plays Legion, and you go and you check it out, I would love to know what your feedback is on the icons, because it's sort of my first stab at going off into like my own icon territory. Um, there was some drama recently because someone posted a link to Roll Better in the AMG Discord, and the mods there deleted the link, and they said you can't post Roll Better links here. You can only post Longshanks links. And a bunch of people were like contacting me on Discord, like, "Hey, did you see this? Like, do you see this? Whatever." And so people, there were some people who got a little pushy and were like asking AMG mods and stuff, like, "Well, why can't we?" and blah blah blah. And so they eventually were like, "Well, because Roll Better uses the X-wing icons." And then people were like, Longshanks also uses the X-wing icons, and so the whole icon thing is such an interesting thing. But you'll probably at one point at someday you'll probably see me come out with a custom icon set for X-wing. Not because I want to. I think the icons that exist now are sufficient. But just because I don't want to get
Sure.
sued.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
hear you.
So
Cool. I'm gonna run the outro here, but if there's anything else you wanted to sneak in, I'll definitely throw it over to you to shout out anyone, but that I'd ask.
No, I'm probably too brain dead to shout out anything, but I guess shout out to my wife for letting me do all this. Shout out anyone who plays X-wing and is married. Like, shout out to all of our spouses that let us do these nerdy things. But other than that, no, man. Thanks for having me on. It's been good. It's been good to talk about it. Love talking about. I'm sure you understand. Like when you're a creator, you're talking about your baby. You never shut up about it. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to come here
Yeah,
and just blab about something I'm really passionate about.
absolutely. I think it's is overdue, and I'm super happy to be the one to have you because this has been a really enlightening conversation. Appreciate it, Brian. And on that note, thank you to Brian for joining us and for being a crucial part of supporting the X-Wing community and tournament organizing at large. This episode is brought to you by Strata Strike. You can go to their Etsy page and buy so many different things, including gaming components for X-Wing and a bunch of other games. They have incredible wood carved templates and template trays as well. I would say it's brought to you by Kuat Print Yards, but Brian, I'm sorry, not. I guess we can't do it this time. Use discount code 312 Squadron. That's 312 capital S, all lowercase QUADRON for 15% off your entire purchase. This qualifies for the entire store, not just X-Wing product. In addition, follow us on Twitch to catch us live. You can catch edited content on YouTube, like us on Facebook for updates, and you can jump into the conversation in Discord if you want to talk our points or anything else, Team League, etc. You can also see X-Wing Alliance updates there as well. And lastly, thank you to our patrons for making this possible. You guys are all the best and our biggest supporters. We love you very much. My name is Nick Sperry. I'm going to throw it over to you, Brian.
I'm Brian Gambrell.
And thank you for listening.